Hey folks, Bespoke Tailor Ray Robinson from You Can Sew It All with Ray, and I want to give you a quick tip. We're starting with tip number one. Tip number one is something that people seem to overlook or skip because perhaps they think it's not essential. When you go through the instructions of a particular pattern, it's called understitching. What is understitching? Why is understitching important? What result does it produce? And so forth. We're going to quickly try to answer that for you. Now you can kind of see what we have here, a little quick mock-up of a four-part or a bodice front or shirt front. And this is the equivalent front. Okay, we're going to put that together real quick, and then we're going to show you the importance. Now this is for sure very familiar to you. It's just a mock-up. Got everything lined up there, so let's go ahead and sew this together. Now I'm going to sew it together what I refer to and what often tailors refer to as a seam. Now, a seam, unless otherwise indicated, is going to be about 3/8 of an inch. I know 5/8 of an inch is what most of you are locked into, and that's fine. Keep doing that. But anytime you hear me refer to a seam, that I'm sewing a seam, it is almost without exception, unless I specify, it's 1 centimeter. 1 centimeter, or in terms that we use here in the States, that's going to be 3/8 of an inch. So I'm doing this, seaming this in a seam. Okay. All right. And I'm using a contrasting thread so that you can see it right there in the film. And yeah, I didn't even bother to perfectly trim the particular interfacing as I put it on there. So we're just mainly getting to the point of what we're doing. Now I'm going to clip these curves. Of course, you always want to do that. And I'm going to trim that back down to about 1/4 of an inch. Make sure we try to keep that into the shot. I could even lift that up a bit. Maybe that'll help. Of course, I could always zoom in on post-production. Let's go ahead and get that trimmed down. I'm going to trim that down to about 1/4 of an inch. Now, I could have done this, and you probably will do well to do this before you clip the curve. For me, it really doesn't make a difference. I know where to stop and still maintain that space there. So we're good. All right. Okay, so here's the point. Okay, so we have the facing, and this is very familiar. I know you're gonna want to turn that around, right? And then you're going to want to press that. But that's not what we're going to do. But I'm going to show you what you naturally, when I say you, I mean really newbies tend to do this. Okay, so you flip that around and then you press it. Okay, but here's what happens often. The edge The edge of a facing, and then the fashion fabric, right? The outside of the garment and the facing, you have an edge right there. You never want to be able to see that seam, the edge of that seam. So if someone is looking right at your garment, they should not be able to see the edge. Now, that's going to hold true in all circumstances. If there's an exception, it would be the rarest of exception. You do not want to see that edge. You want to keep that edge tucked under, right? And one of the ways to assure that is that we're going to do a understitch. Now, if you look, you can see that I have, okay, this is the outside of the cloth. This is the outside, the part that you see of the garment. This, of course, is the facing. Now, I'm going to move with my hand. Let's get these scissors out of the way. I'm going to move with my hand the seam allowance so that the seam allowance and the facing are on the same side of the seam. Can we see that? You can even feel it right here. I don't feel a lump or a bump or anything, but right here I can feel the seam allowance on the facing side. Then what I'm going to do, I'm going to stitch very close to that edge on the facing side, and we're going to lock that seam allowance down. Okay. So I get that under my machine. Let's move this light down just a little bit. I'm probably stitching at about an 1/8. Now, as I'm doing this, my hands are naturally doing kind of a separating action there to make sure that I keep that facing as well as the seam allowance on this side. If for some reason it moved over, I would be able to feel it right there. I'm kind of spreading, not exaggerated, I'm not stretching, but I'm kind of spreading as I'm sewing the seam. So we're going to go on around, maintaining that with my fingers, kind of like a depth gauge. Okay, now for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to stop right there for a second. I'll lift that up, clip, and what I've done, I've gone half the distance, okay? Now I'm doing that to illustrate a point. Okay, at this point, I've only understitched half of it, okay? Now, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to flip that under. Wow, now notice how that just goes naturally under. See, I didn't have to convince it. I didn't have to coerce it. It just naturally gives me an edge. Pull that out of the way there. Whereas this, I do have to fumble with it to find the edge and hope that I don't have the actual seam of the edge showing. And you cannot see, if you look straight down, you cannot see the actual seam edge. But right here, very possibly you can. Can you see that? You very possibly can. But right here you can't. It's impossible. Because when you understitch, it moves it toward the back. So that edge no longer lives, or that seam no longer lives on the very edge. So it naturally does something that is called favor. It favors the edge. That's just a term. It's not that important right now. But you get a nice, clean, crisp edge, and that edge is sewn in, right? Whereas this one, even if you stitch on the top, do a nice little top stitching, You're not going to guarantee that you get this correct to the point where you're not showing that edge. So I don't want to understate that. You are not supposed to see the edge, the stitch line, the edge right there. See that? You're not supposed to be able to see the edge. It's supposed to be hidden or tucked under your garment. So we see it's nice and clean right there, and right here it's not. So I'm going to go ahead and finish it out. We're going to go back, and I'm just going to roll right on top of that a little bit. No need to backstitch in this case. And go ahead and finish that. I'll go ahead and clip that off right there. And now I will go press it. And there we have it. There's only one word that you can say about that nice, crisp edge. That edge is clean. You see that? And once again, I did this stitch in a different color so you can see it. But that edge is clean. From the top side, from the side that we will be looking at when you're wearing the garment, and even if you are right up on the person and look right at the edge of their garment, you cannot see the seam that runs between the facing and the top fabric. The seam right there. See? You cannot see that. And understitching pulls it down. How far down does that pull it? It looks like it's less than 1/16 of an inch. Maybe even less than that. But it's just enough to get that edge out of the way. You can't see it. And once again, that is stitched in. And that's beautiful. That's understitching. That's why you do it. That's why you don't want to skip it. If you found any value from this video, please share it. Ray Robinson, You Can Sew It All with Ray. We'll see you in the next video.